What's up, you guys? It's Greg Cherry, and today we're going to be talking about a very special topic. I'm talking about the WWE Draft. Now, the WWE Draft has been around for a long time, but in this video, we're going to explain a few ways that it could change. Now, looking back on the history of the WWE Draft, it all started in the year 2002. The Rock was the first pick. Vince McMahon and Ric Flair were leaders of their own brands, and a new era of WWE began shortly after the demise of the alliance in WCW and ECW. So they figured, if we don't have competition, let's create our own. In 2004, there was a draft lottery in which 6 superstars from Raw would become SmackDown superstars, and 6 SmackDown superstars would become Raw superstars. Now, did they butcher it a little? Perhaps, but it was still a fun time, despite the fact that a trade would go down late into the night, as they said in storyline, which would send Triple H back to Raw for Booker T and the Dudley Boys. So there's a lot of value in one guy. In 2005, they did the draft a little bit differently. Instead of announcing picks over one night, they did an entire draft month, where one random superstar would show up every single week of June 2005 to switch shows. This proved to be an effective way to do it. Led to one of the big reveals of Batista, the World Heavyweight Champion, joining SmackDown, and of course it kicked off with John Cena joining Raw as the WWE Champion. In 2006, ECW joined the fray, and we found out that there was going to be one draft pick from Monday Night Raw and one draft pick from Friday Night SmackDown going to ECW. Again, not a full-fledged draft, but it gave an excuse to send Rob Van Dam to ECW, and also Kurt Angle, who would, ironically, leave the company less than 2 months later. In 2007, the draft idea changed a little bit, because instead of the general managers of the show drafting superstars by announcing them, the wrestlers would compete in matches to determine which brand got a certain superstar, featuring Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. Now, ECW typically got the shaft, but on this night, it was a very eerie night, because it was when Chris Benoit got sent to ECW. And unfortunately, we know what happened a couple weeks later. They continued this idea in 2008, as well as 2009, 2010, before finishing this idea up in 2011, and the only reason they stopped it then was because they eventually stopped the initial brand split. 5 years later, in 2016, with the epic return of one Shane McMahon, the idea was presented to split the roster off again to Raw and SmackDown, with Stephanie and Mick Foley having charge over Monday Night Raw, and Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan having charge over SmackDown. This was the first time that NXT superstars were involved in the draft, and we saw that with the first round pick to Monday Night Raw of Finn Balor. After the initial 2016 draft, we saw something called the Superstar Shakeup, which superstars would randomly show up on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown without being pre-announced, and they would all be surprises. This idea continued in 2018 by doing the Superstar Shakeup again. Now, they did it again in 2019, but they also implemented something that a lot of fans groaned when they hear about, and that is the dreaded wild card rule. The wild card rule may have been amongst the dumbest things that happened in 2019. And if you remember WWE in 2019, there were lots of them. Speaking of 2019, this is when the current draft format was implemented, as SmackDown was initially on Fox for the first time, and Monday Night Raw still on USA. They implemented a 2-night draft, with the first night of the draft being held on Friday Night SmackDown and the second night held on Monday Night Raw. They had different pools of superstars to pull from for each night. Aside from the year 2022, this format of the draft has been consistent over the last several years, but this idea has also gotten a lot of flack from people, because instead of separating superstars or trading superstars to each brand, they decide to redraft the entire main roster and sprinkle in some NXT talent in there as well. Which seems very confusing, because why would you waste a lot of energy to say, hey, this person is on the same show that they've been on for 2 years, and we're keeping it that way. So with that said, I have devised 3 specific ways that WWE could fix the draft. The first way is simple. Instead of doing the 2-night draft format that they have been doing the last few years, if you're going to redraft the whole roster, why not make it a Netflix special? Why not make it a live special that you can have basically copying the ESPN NFL draft model and just implementing that into the WWE program? I mean, you already have Pat McAfee on board, so I feel like he'd be a perfect panel guest for the show. And that way you can have people anticipating the draft, seeing where everybody's going, and it doesn't interrupt any storylines, it doesn't interrupt any other things going on the show. The sole focus would be the draft. You can have that sports style that WWE has always craved, that ESPN presentation that they shoot for. You can also implement storylines in the middle of the show so that new feuds can begin on this draft special. Why not utilize the sports presentation? You have Joe Tessitore, you have Pat McAfee, you have guys with this sports history. Add Michael Cole and Wade Barrett, the commentary teams. Add Corey Graves and Vic Joseph and Booker T. Have them all discuss all these talents going to Raw or SmackDown. Throw NXT in there, for crying out loud. If you don't want NXT treated like a quote-unquote developmental brand, then why not have people be drafted to NXT? I think that makes perfect sense. But again, if you're going to do this sports style presentation on SmackDown and Raw, why not make it its own special? You don't have to go 3 nights like the NFL does. You can do it all in 1 night. You can invite fans if you want to. You can have it be this big thing. You do pre-shows for SummerSlam and WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble and all this stuff. Why not do a special WWE Draft show on Netflix? I think it could work. The next idea I have is, if something isn't broke, why fix it? Bring back the random style draft from 2007 to 2011. I feel like that was the most special period of the WWE Draft. It provided unpredictability, it provided random switches of the roster, but because they advertised that it was random, it made more sense than people just redrafting the entire roster or drafting people that might not necessarily make sense. It's like, in this day and age, for example, why wouldn't anybody want Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Rhea Ripley? Why wouldn't they want those people first and foremost on their roster? If you're fantasy booking this kind of stuff, make it more random so that you justify people moving shows and have it make sense. Just don't do the Cena swap like you did in 2011, where he went from Raw to SmackDown and SmackDown back to Raw in the same show. Don't do that, because you'll kill it. And the third way is very simple. Don't do the draft at all. It sounds stupid. It sounds completely ridiculous to not do the WWE Draft at all. Why make this video if you say, well, don't do it at all? I mean, if you're doing the transfer window and copying college football like that, if you're making people switch rosters whenever they feel like it, then what's the point of the draft and what's the point of the brand split? If you're going to do these things, have some consistency. And I know a lot of people say, I've heard it from one very specific person, don't apply logic to wrestling, because you can't 100% apply logic to wrestling. But as a viewer, as somebody invested in the WWE product, why would you not try and make it make sense? Don't treat the fans like they're stupid. Because there are people like me who remember the slightest of things. Why would you insult our intelligence by doing the draft and then having people switch shows 2 months later just because? Make some ground rules. Or just don't do the draft at all and have them switch shows whenever you want. It's your show. Just make it make sense. What do you guys think? What do you think should happen with the draft? Should it stay the same way it is, or does it need a change up in the worst way? Comment below, like and share this video, subscribe to the Greg Cherry brand. You'll get new content every week. You get the live shows every Wednesday. I'll see you next time. Don't be a jack.